friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Aireonna. Join this Saturday morning, early afternoon with Marco, and it's a good Saturday morning. You were just telling me you had some delicious food last night. Do you want to tell everyone what dessert you have? I feel like we always open this up on like a food segment.
Yeah, so last night me and my wife made some deep fried Oreos. Fried Oreos. I don't know if they weren't a deep fry or anything, but fried Oreos, they were bomb. And then we had some like fruits and stuff, so it was pretty good. Kind of balance it out.
Sounds so good. I made like they were supposed to be s'mores tahini cookies. And my problem is yesterday I ate 6 of them and today I ate 4 of them. But okay, tell me if you think that this is like me lying to myself or if you think it's like honest. You know how if you make a smoothie, you put granola on it? Like I always do that, put granola on my smoothie. And the granola I get is like healthy-ish for you granola, but it has like maple syrup and shit in it, right? And the cookies that I made, they were made out of oats, almond flour, chocolate chips, tahini, which is like peanut butter but from sunflowers. I think collagen, and that is it. I think that's it. And like baking powder. Like I feel like that's the same ingredients that is in my granola. So like even though I had like 4 cookies in my smoothie, because what I did is I like broke it up and the parts of the cookie that had the chocolate chips in it, I ate. And then the like actual cookie part, because I don't like that part as much because I'm 4 years old. I'm like the kid that still eats the frosting off the cake. So that I put the cookie part in my smoothie and like ate it as if it was granola instead of using granola. And I kind of think that that is fair. But
So
maybe not.
you break apart the cookie, eat it as granola, but you don't call it a cookie. You call it your granola.
No. I'm just saying, like, I feel kind of, bad.
It's
Like, more
healthier.
normal people might, like, look down on the fact that I've eaten 12 cookies in the last less than 48 hours. But what I'm trying to tell myself to make myself feel better is if I had just put granola on my smoothies yesterday and today, instead of breaking up my cookies, I don't think anyone would have had a problem with that. They would have been like, what a healthy meal. So I'm just saying if the ingredients are similar,
Fair enough.
I feel like we shouldn't be judging me for eating 12 cookies a day.
See, but I'm a recovering cookie addict. Like I legit was addicted to cookies at one point. I mean, I still kind of am, but
Yeah.
like I could eat 2 dozens of cookies in like a sitting. Like I could just, but like,
I
but that's
love cookies.
so
I wonder, you were talking about Oreos. I wonder if I can make like, I think
those are
Oreos are
vegan.
actually already vegan,
They
but I
are
wonder if
vegan.
I could like make them I bet I could make like healthier for you. I made Thin Mints one time with my dad. Um, like the Girl Scouty ones. I used to be a Girl Scout girly, and I was like really big in the selling thing because I was poor. So to do anything, I had to like sell a bunch of stuff. And I used to make everyone in my neighborhood buy 20 million boxes of cookies, and then I would go eat all of their cookies after. So were you I think that in my house the favorites were the Thin Mints, the samosas, and then the lemon. There was like a lemon one at one point. What ones? I know that there was others, but those were for our household the favorites. Which one was you? I think the most contentious is like samosa or Thin Mint. And the weird thing is, as a kid, I was 100% samosa girly, but I think now I would be more of a Thin Mint girly. Now I'm more like before when you're a kid. I don't know if you were like this, but when I was a kid, I just wanted the sweetest possible option of whatever it was.
I mean, I'm still like that. So my go to. So my family used to do the. I think the samosas are the caramel delights, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So my family used to do the Thin Mints, the caramel delights, and then I used to really like the peanut butter patties because of the peanut butter. But
Yeah. Yeah.
now I really like the caramel delights. So I could go down
What-
on some caramel delights.
I was just telling you that I'm blanking. Starts with a T, tahini cookies.
Tahini.
I made these peanut butter balls, like bliss balls or whatever they're called, the other day, where you put like maple syrup, peanut butter, chocolate chips. I think I used coconut, and you like roll them all up, and then I put them in the freezer for like, not to like freeze them, but just to get them cold. Melted chocolate, dipped them in like chocolate and coconut oil, and then put them back. So then it becomes like. Did you ever have a
Harden.
magic shell as a kid?
Yeah.
Dude, my grandma's house was the shit. My dad was in the military, so he went to Iraq for like multiple times for long periods of time. And I would live with my grandparents when that happened. And my grandma had this cupboard. And in this cupboard, there was magic shell. My friend is so secretly trying to walk by and pretend that she's not doing it. She just gave me the funniest eyes. The other day, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I was streaming. And because I'm staying at my friend's, and I was not where I am now, but I was in the office, and the only way to get to the bathroom is either to go like outside of the house, like into the, because it's a new, for people who are watching, it's like a New York apartment, so the hallway is like a mutual
Oh, okay,
hallway,
okay.
and then the front door, or you have to go through the office. But I'd lock the front door because like I had just started living here, and they were always like, "You never lock the front door," so I was trying to be better about locking the front door because I'm like ridiculous. I grew up in the Russian River area for like all the Bay Area people watching, and it's like so safe. And then right after that, I moved to SLO, which is also San Luis Obispo in Southern California or Central California, also so safe. I did live in Santa Barbara and then in like Santa Rosa area, and those two aren't as safe. But I've just never been a lock my front door person. Knock on wood, don't come rob me. Now I am. But anyways, I had the horrible habit of not locking the front door. So my friends were like, "You need to lock the front door." So I came home before my stream like last week, and I made sure to lock the front door. They were in the bedroom, and they couldn't get out from, like, they couldn't go in the hallway into the front because the front door was locked. And for some reason, you know how like you and I, it would be totally fine for them just to like walk by behind me. I used to stream in my room with my sister, and she'd like be doing a full on activity over here. But for some reason, thought they were nervous, and I think this is actually, it was after the Super Bowl. It was one of the shows, maybe it was either the Super Bowl or a show that I did with you, because it was one of the longer shows. And when I ended it, and you know how like we'll say goodbye and keep talking? When I ended it, they like opened the door. They were like, "We have to pee so bad." And I was like, "You guys could have just walked by. What the heck?" And they were like, "We didn't want to interrupt." But
That's
that was
hilarious.
a lot of tangents. Um, I think the other thing I was talking about was just food. So we can start talking about 49ers football now. Um, I was just telling you, there we go. Hold on really quick to end off our cookie segment. Samosas are the boss. I like that. And then Bay Area Thrills is hinting at us to please get to the the topic at hand. I was just telling you, for anyone who watches the Warriors, you guys might be familiar with Ethan Strauss. He has like a really giant Substack. Been a beat reporter for the Warriors for quite some time, but he's also an avid 49ers fan, maybe even a little bit of a Brock Purdy fan. And I was just listening to him on the Guy Haberman podcast and was all excited to come and talk to you just about Brock Purdy and about the offseason. But we will start with Bay Area Thrills comment, and we can say, do you think that the 49ers should try to keep Chase Young? I'll let you take the floor since I've ranted for 20 minutes.
So out of all the free agents, I definitely think he's probably the top on the list in terms of free agents. Now, you just gave up a top 100 pick to the Washington Commanders. Now, I don't think necessarily the Niners care about that draft pick due to them having 11 draft picks. Like, that's not something of
Yeah.
importance. But when you do give up a top 100 pick for a player who had a career year, you look at his numbers, 15% win percentage on pass rush attempts, 60 something or 70 something pressures. He had 50 something hurries, 7.5 sacks. All of this is career highs. So when you're looking at it, you kind of want to pair guys like that. When you look at the 15% win percentage, that's top 30 in the NFL at the edge rushing position. So you're getting a top 30 player, which means there's likely a few teams he's starting on. Niners already have one of the other ones in the top 30, obviously in the top 5, with Nick Bosa. If you get Chase Young to be opposite of Nick Bosa and be who we think he can be at a set price, like now there has to be a set price, right? You can't just be like,
Yeah.
Chase Young can't say he wants 25 million and you give it to him because he's
No.
at the end of the day he's not worth that, right? Like
No.
he's not. At least he hasn't proven to be. I thought he was phenomenal in the Super Bowl. It took George Kittle to get him in the right mindset,
Hyped up. Hyped up.
right? So he had a
That I want to
phenomenal
say
Super
that
Bowl.
worries. I want to say that worries me because I feel like we as 49er fans, when they traded for Chase Young, thought, hey, yeah, he had effort issues in Washington, but we don't even know if that's him. Like the Washington culture is so bad. The coaching staff is pretty terrible. Ownership is pretty terrible. There was so much more pressure on him in Washington. He's gonna come to the 49ers, play with his buddy Nick Bosa. He's never gonna struggle with effort. He's never gonna struggle with motor, and he's really going to be able to be more successful since teams are going to be keying in on Nick Bosa. He's going to get a lot of those like extra sacks. And I will say, I think for the first like maybe even 3 games, we really did see that. And I feel like 49er fans were like, like kind of what we were expecting was justified. But then I mean, in my opinion, there was a huge fall off up until that very last game. And I just don't know, like, is he someone who does struggle with like internal motivation and like did he only pick it up because he was like, oh, like if I don't play well in this game, I'm like really screwed for my future in the contract? Because to me, he had all the motivation in the world to play well all year this year because he could have gotten himself so much more money. So I'm curious, like, do you think it's a mental issue for him, or do you think maybe he's just like not as talented as where he was drafted at? And because I just wouldn't want to, I'd be wary about signing someone where you think that it could be a possible motivation problem. You know what I mean? Because once you pay them, what are they going to be motivated for?
Yeah,
And
and
he's
that's a
already
good
struggling with
question.
motivation during the contract year is when you're supposed to play your best, and this was already an inconsistent year.
Yeah, so when you look at it, like you gotta also put in the fact that like when you develop bad habits, those bad habits are gonna be with you, right? For a little while. Like you have to
That's
break those
interesting.
bad
I like
habits.
that.
It's truly hard to break a bad habit. And he had those bad habits for 4 years in Washington. So like it's a
Yeah.
true habit that he created. Now, when you look at him with the Niners, I look at it as a whole, right? Because Chase Young had reps and had opportunities where, or I guess not opportunities, but times where he looked the part. He looked like Chase Young, the top 5 pick that was drafted in Washington. But opposite of him, Nick Bosa had a stellar year once Chase Young got here. I don't know if that
Yeah.
was because
It
of
did. It did. You're right.
I don't know if it was because there was someone opposite of him that was commanding a couple of double teams at times. I thought in the second half of the Detroit Lions game, he was phenomenal. I
Yeah.
thought in the Washington in the Super Bowl, he was really good. I know a lot of people like to look at sack numbers. I don't really look at sack numbers. I look at what are you bringing to the team? Are you worth 13 million? Because I think that's where right now Spot Rack has him at is in terms of his value at 13 million. I would bring him back for 13 million. Especially a quality uh, number 2 edge rusher opposite of Nick
The thing is,
Bosa.
they've been looking for a bookend opposite of Nick Bosa forever. So if they don't re-sign him, they are going to have to either look for someone else in free agency
The
or the
draft,
draft. And
Austin Booker, please.
they've struggled a lot in the draft. I mean, what even happened to Drake Jackson? Was it purely injury? The reason because he wasn't even like a rotational guy pretty much for most of this year, and at least last year he was that.
I don't really think he's that good. Like, so when you go to, so when I watched his tape from college, I thought it was really good. Like, I was like, okay, this kid, he could bend, he can puts pass rush moves
Yeah.
on. But after watching him in the NFL, and it and I kind of like having this process happen because not necessarily for him, but for me, in terms of evaluating, right? And what it is for me is I skipped a step in terms of evaluating. And when I was watching him dominate with pure athleticism, not necessarily technique. And he was winning with pure
Okay.
athleticism. He
That was
wasn't
kind of
attacking
sorry to interrupt, but isn't that kind of what Balky, I can't do his voice, but Trent
with
Balky
Trembaki.
kind of had that problem in Jacksonville when he got starts with a T. He drafted someone number 1 over Aiden
Oh,
Hutchinson.
Trayvon Walker.
Yeah. And the
I think that's his
idea
name.
was like his physical attributes and his athleticism was so much higher that you felt like, okay, if he can put it all together, he can be even better than Aiden Hutchinson, who is good, but like not like so impressive. He's just like so consistent. Like it's kind of almost, and maybe this isn't totally fair, but it's kind of almost the Ayuk and Debo comparison, right? Like one guy is more physically maybe talented, where a different guy is like more consistent and hardworking, and I think that is a at every position in the NFL. That's kind of like a give and pull with the GM or the coach on what is more important for your team and for drafting and stuff like that. I agree. But go ahead
Yeah,
with your Drake Jackson. I didn't mean to. I
no,
was
you're
just
fine.
making lots of connections.
The good thing is the Trayvon Walker did have a great second year. He had 10 sacks this year, so second year he
Well,
had
there you
that
go.
jump.
Good for him.
So,
That makes me happy.
um, for Drake Jackson, he attacks the full man, right? Like he doesn't attack half the body. And as an edge rusher, you have to attack half the body. You have to cut it in half, attack half, and that's how you win reps. Drake Jackson thinks he could attack the full man, and I think that's an issue. So, for me, if the
Can
Niners
you
do,
explain that? I'm interested in that. Do you just mean like rule wise you have to hit you have to
so
hit
if you're
lower or
no, so if you're trying to win on outside, right, or inside, like you're gonna attack half the
I'm
frame,
going
right?
I'm gonna
So
go
if
try to
remember, because for example, let's say I'm an offensive lineman, I'm standing straight here. The guy's coming to this side of me, right?
yeah.
If he attacks half of me, it makes it harder for me to get my inside hand on
Yeah,
him,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you want to attack half the body or vice versa. If you're going inside, you want to attack half and then counter off of that. So when you're attacking half the body, it allows you to win reps. Drake Jackson attacks straight in the middle, right? So it allows offensive linemen to get their hands on
To be
him,
able to use both
both
hands.
hands. So you're a lot. If you go back, if you go watch Nick Bosa, for example, he normally tries to attack half the body unless he is setting up the offensive lineman for a counter move. That's the only time you really see him. Like for example, his when he attacks full body, you see him do a bull rush and pull. So like if you're gonna attack half the body, you got to have a plan, and Drake Jackson doesn't. That's the issue. Is he tries to use his pure athleticism, thinks he could get around or use his strength to attack the full man. I think Chase Young definitely, if you keep him in the Chris Kasaric realm, he trains with Nick Bosa this offseason. Hopefully, like if you were to sign him, he would probably go train with him. You
Yeah.
could see a different Chase
Bring
Young.
him to Florida. I like that. I like that idea.
So I would love to see Chase Young back at the right price. Definitely the 49ers have to kind of stay a little bit younger. Chase Young he's only 24, but going to be 25 in April. So like
That's
you
kind
are
of
getting
crazy.
younger.
That's kind of
You,
crazy.
so for me, you have to stay younger. You also got to think about the future. In 5 years, he's only going to be 30. Like that's something to think about as well. If he's only at 13 million, you got to like bring him in, and hopefully you could get him on a 2-year deal, maybe a 3-year deal, like a prove it contract for him, playing across Nick Bosa. That would be definitely phenomenal to see. But if they do go draft, I know I've been throwing out draft
Yeah, yeah.
names
Tell
for a
me.
lot of people. Austin Booker, I think he's probably going to go a little bit higher than most think. He only has, I want to say, at most 800 snaps. I want to say maybe less, 500 roughly, in his career. I thought if he would have went back to
Where's
college,
he from?
from Kansas, the University of Kansas, Austin
Okay.
Booker, he caught my eye at the Senior Bowl, and to be honest, him opposite of Nick Bosa would be filthy. Like watching him, he probably will end up going maybe late second, late second to late third. Some people
That's
saying
doable.
he's going in the fifth round. His first step is explosive. It's freaky explosive. He has great arm length. He's really athletic. The only issue is he hasn't had many reps to show his development in pass rushing, but I'm willing to bet on it because he reminded me of Max Crosby at the Senior Bowl. And Max Crosby wasn't Max Crosby when he was coming out, right? Like when I compare a player to a player when they're coming out, Max
Yeah, yeah,
Crosby
yeah.
wasn't what he is now. Like he
Yeah, yeah,
became
yeah.
this
He had to.
all
He
pro
took time
player.
to get there.
So I definitely think if the Niners do want to go in the draft, I definitely think
And I
Austin
like that
Booker
you
would
said.
fit.
I like you said that could be a second round pick. Are you anticipating that they'll spend that first one on an offensive lineman?
So I don't think he'll go in the set. I think going 63 would be a little high for Austin Booker. I think it would be more in that 90 range.
Okay.
So maybe a little bit early, maybe 75 to 95 where he should go, based off of my evaluation on him. But
Okay.
again, since he's not really developed, he might go a little
But
bit
that's
later.
like very good and like that's promising for the 49ers because they could take I mean, I don't know if you would consider that a flyer, but I mean if you think of the fact that none of their third round picks are on their team anymore, they might be willing to get a guy like that just to even test it out. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. That's something they could like. I mean, if you think about it, like they
I
need
was
someone opposite of Nick Bosa. And if you're not
Yeah.
going to re-sign Chase Young, you better be looking at the draft because free agency, you're going to overpay anyways. So don't if you're gonna address the position in
Now,
free
how do you
agency,
feel about the booming cap?
it
Tons of
doesn't
money,
really. So I know
making it rain.
a lot of people on Twitter are saying like, oh, that means we could sign more players. It doesn't really mean you could sign more players. Like it truly just means all these players' values are going to go up. So for example, in free agency, Brandon Ayuk's
So, like,
number went
stuff is
from
just getting
20.
more expensive?
Yeah. So, for example, Brandon Ayuk's number, right, was at, let's
Yeah.
say, hypothetically, he wants 22 million. Well, since the cap
Oh,
went up, now,
I thought he was always gonna want more than Debo.
oh, no, I'm just hypothetically, I'm just
Yeah,
throwing
yeah.
numbers out there, right? So,
Okay.
let's say hypothetically he wants 22. Now, with the cap increasing by an extra 5 million, he now wants 25. Like, he wants it, like, right? Like, he sees, like, these players and these agents see the numbers going up. That means, hey, I want
Yeah,
more
they're not
money.
like, "Oh"
They're
Yeah,
not like,
yeah,
"Oh, you know
yeah.
what? Keep our value at what it is." So, like, for me, I see a lot of people are
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you don't have to cut juice." No, you still think about cutting juice. Like, you still think about doing this, this, and this, right? Because just because the number went up 30 million doesn't mean the Niners have 30 million in cap space. They're actually only at 800,000 in cap space. They have to create cap space just to even sign. For example, if the Niners don't make any moves, don't sign anyone in free agency, they have to make cap space by extending players, restructuring players just to sign their draft class. That's how bad they are right now in terms of cap. Like they'll create the cap space. It's not hard to create it. You just turn a lot of
How
the
are
contracts
they
into
how
signing bonuses and stuff like that and move it down.
Can I ask a silly question? I feel like the pro of Brock Purdy is that they should be able to kind of stack their team up at least for one more year. That was kind of my what I titled this stream is Brock Purdy's rookie deal the Super Bowl window, the end of the Super Bowl window for the 49ers. And what I mean by that is like kind of I've been going back and forth on my streams, and I know I watched your stream with Rohan and Grant, and just with Rohan the day before that, and you have also kind of talked about this, and it's been a theme for since even the regular season of people kind of talking about like was that the last year of the window? Like, is this still with this core? Like, should you rebuild or retool? And whether or not I think this core is good enough to win, I am anticipating that the 49ers are going to approach it as more of a retool than a real bit rebuild. And I think that they're going to do that just because they feel like they have the ability to kind of keep all these stars together while Brock Purdy is making so little. So I guess what I was kind of asking right there is like, how come if most teams are paying like 30 to 50 million dollars for their quarterback and Brock Purdy is making under $1 million, I feel like they should have no problem re-signing all their guys if they
So
wanted to. I'm not saying that's the right idea, like from a talent perspective, like are all those guys worth it and good enough, like they are aging, but I think if they wanted to, they should be able to bring them back for this. Like, we're going to get into the Ayuk example. And I've been discussing this all week. Like, should they trade Debo? Should they keep Ayuk? Are they going to be open to trading Ayuk? All these things. But I anticipate that they're going to keep them both for this year
you have
because
to.
they have the money to do that. Yeah.
Well, not necessarily have the money, right? It's the way the cap numbers roll. So when you
It's
look at
also more
Debo's
expensive to get rid of Debo right now.
yeah, so like when you
Um,
look at a lot of these big contracts, for example, Debo's contract, in order just to get rid of him this year, you're paying him to play for another team. So, for example, if the Niners were to, and I keep trying to reiterate this to a lot of
yeah.
people, um, Debo won't get cut because I've seen people on Twitter like, oh, what if you just cut him? Like, you're not going to cut big name
It doesn't
players.
make
One,
sense, right?
doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. Two, if you were to cut him
Like,
before, and like
guys,
you
it
could
doesn't
cut
make
him
sense. Also, Kyle Shanahan likes him.
exactly. So you get two players where you could cut at the start of the league year, but then you could designate them as post June 1st. So you get two of those players that you could do that to. But even so, for example, the Niners trade Debo before the draft. They're eating 22 million and they're only saving 6.8 million. That's not happening. Like that doesn't. do anything for you. Paying Debo 22 this year to play for another team if you trade him before June 1st, which you want to do that before the draft, so you could at least have that draft capital to retool, or else you're kind of trading them for no point. If you trade them after the June 1st deadline, you're eating 22. You save 22 million, but you're also eating 6 million and 15 million this year. So you're pushing your draft capital back to the next 2025 draft. I don't think the Niners, it doesn't help the Niners this year. Like, so looking at everything, it does not help the Niners this year just to trade Debo for a second round pick, a third round pick. Like, doesn't help them. Like, it truly doesn't. And I know someone threw the cap number of dead cap of 42 million. That dead cap, I know Albany threw it 42.7. That dead cap is if he's
Too much.
released before June 1st. I don't see him being released. So that dead cap number to me is kind of out the window. So to your point, the Niners kind of have to go all in on this season. Like, this is their Super Bowl window. Looking at Brock Purdy's contract, right? You going into his third year. After your third year, since he wasn't drafted in the first round, he could technically be extended, right?
Yeah.
That creates cap space for the next year, but it also skyrockets his cap numbers a little bit because they're so low right now. It would have them go up a little bit. So when you look at them, guys like Fred Warner could be extended. You can lower those cap numbers. The guys that you want to keep around for a long time. Fred Warner.
Yeah, like Fred's gonna
Charvarius Ward.
retire a 49er if they
Absolutely,
have
if they let him.
But yeah.
So guys like Fred Warner, you could make cap space around. Charvarius Ward, you could extend and keep him until his year 30. Arik Armstead's contract's outrageous.
Update really quick for anyone who's watching. I did just see yesterday Charvarius Ward had a successful wrist surgery. Core surgery.
Who?
Charvarius Ward.
I thought it was groin.
I thought on our 49ers on Instagram it said it was a core surgery. Am I wrong? I'm not.
I don't know.
Hope I'm not giving wrong information. I was looking at the Raj on Instagram.
Because I know he had surgery, but I thought it was on his groin. I could be wrong. Oh no, it was core. Because Jennifer Lee. Okay. No, yeah, she reported that it was his core. Okay. Dang, playing through a core injury as a corner is hard,
right? Because like extending to get the ball and everything. Yeah, directly from Moody. All he was willing to say was core muscle. Damn. But I'm happy hard. That I'm happy he's doing well. It's crazy, like kind of now that the Super Bowl has passed, like listening to you heard Eric Armstead had the end. We already knew the plantar fasciitis, but the meniscus, like. We know that George Kittle was playing through a shoulder injury prior to even he heard it more in the Super Bowl. But it's always kind of, I feel like players like to keep their injuries hush-hush no matter what, but especially like until after the season is done. And then you kind of hear how much they were really going through. I know with Drank Greenlaw, my heart goes out to him. Sounds like he was very aware that he was risking tearing that Achilles when he was trying to play through it. So
going back to like the original, does the window closing, is it alive during Brock's rookie deal? It technically is, because you have 2 years and all of the contracts, bless you. You have a lot of the contracts going a certain situation where there are high cap numbers over the next couple of years. You could keep those guys. Like, that's not an issue to keep them, because you could create a lot of cap space by extending or restructuring a couple of guys, which are the ones I named. So looking at everything, I think the window's open as long as Brock Purdy's here. Well, at least for his rookie contract.
For his rookie, yeah.
But I would definitely say, I think the Niners window as a Super Bowl caliber team is open as long as Kyle Shanahan is the head coach. Now, I was very critical of Kyle during the Super Bowl. I thought Kyle Shanahan was a big reason the 49ers lost the Super Bowl. I thought calling a lot of man beaters for Deebo Samuel was terrible. I thought the way he hired his defense coordinator and fired his defense coordinator at the same time was terrible, not allowing his defense coordinator to do what he wanted. But Kyle Shanahan, go ahead.
Actually, I was going to say, can I ask you, do you have like some guys for defensive coordinator that you're assuming it's going to be? I know that that's been kind of underlining all this news. Tim Kawakami came out a couple days ago. I feel like teasing 49ers content creators that there was about to be a DC. Are you anticipating it being an internal hire or an external hire? Can I at least ask you that?
I based off on how it's going, I think it's gonna be a like if it's internal, just hire the guy and move on, right? Like, but they also could
Yeah.
have. The thing is, though, is they could have already have hired him if it's internal, and it's hush hush. Like, you're our defensive coordinator,
Maybe.
Daniel Bullock's your D coordinator. Hush
I
hush.
assume. Do you think that they're gonna announce it before? Because on Tuesday is the combine, right? Normally, I
The
assume
start of
that
the
they would have
combine
it.
normally.
I think that they would. Is it a smart assumption for me to think that they would want to hire a guy before the combine?
Absolutely, because you kind of
Yeah.
want to know. Well, even if it, yes, but no, right? Because sometimes you want your defensive coaches to have an input, or you want your coaches to have an input. I don't think the Niners really care. I truly don't, because they're going to
Yeah,
draft
it's
who
true.
they
They're
want.
like, we're gonna get whoever we want to get,
So
type of
for
thing.
them, I don't think it's necessarily a big deal to do it. Now, I think it will happen before Tuesday. But for example, the reason what I'm saying is it could have already been hired is I've talked to coaches, and there's been multiple coaches in the NFL. One of them that is currently around the Niners, or he was around the Niners, I should say. I'm not going to say necessarily who it
Marco's
was,
plugged in, guys.
but they at one point they had a few opportunities to interview with different organizations for a higher role. It was never leaked because of their agent. So
Wow.
that is something to take a look at. Where if depending on who your agent is, if your agent's not doing their job, it could definitely impact who hears what's going on, right? For example, if let's say Daniel Bullocks has an agent that is not doing his job the right way, and he's already interviewed.
Yeah.
Normally, it's the agent who will go to Ian Rappaport, text Adam Schefter, and say, "Hey,
And you want
this
that to
so and
be out,
so."
right?
Usually, you do because it kind of like has like the legal. Oh, if this team
Yeah, it
likes him, that
helps.
means he
Yeah, it
must be
helps.
a really good
Yeah, yeah,
coach.
yeah. That's what I thought too.
So it could be the situation where the Niners are keeping it hush hush with the other agents to try to figure out who it is. They could have already hired him, but I think it's going to be internal. I don't think it should be external. You already went externally. The team speaks very highly of Daniel Bullocks. I know Travarius Ward, Denominal Lenore, like, and someone else. They spoke about him, and they were on a podcast and they were talking about how he doesn't get enough credit for the defense. He doesn't get enough credit for having them in the right position as defensive backs. That he
Yeah.
knows what the offense is doing like the back of his hand. How he's
Like the
in
opposite problem that Adam Peters had, right? Where like I feel like Adam Peters, whoever was his agent, was doing a fantastic job. Because like 3 years ago, people were like, every good pick that the 49ers have, it's Adam Peters' fault. I'm not saying it was or
It's
wasn't,
true.
but just whoever was getting his storyline out there was definitely helping him out. Really quickly before we get to that, Nicotina says, smash that like button and subscribe to Ashley, also to Clutch Gene Sports. I don't know. Did I make our little names go away on accident?
I think when you bring up the comments, it'll go. I think
Oh, it goes away.
sometimes.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
See.
yeah, you're right. Okay. Well, everyone, make sure to subscribe to me and also to Marco at Clutching Sports. I just saw that and I wanted to say that. I want to get to 2,000 subscribers maybe by the end of next month, this month. I'm only like a couple away, but I think it could be nice.
Damn, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. Get her to 2,000. Make sure you
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
drop
yeah,
a.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Uh, you have where they could drop super chats.
I think so. The other day my dad said that he didn't think it was working, but
If you
my
can
dad
drop
is
a
also
super chat to
old.
let us drop a super chat to let us know that you could drop
Yeah,
a super
yeah,
chat
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
There we go.
show some
I
love.
like that.
So
Marco's petitioning for me. I like that. But really quick back to Daniel Bullocks. I know there's been a couple guys who have been talked about, but I feel like his name was one of the first names that I've seen, and I like that you brought up the Diamador Lenore interview. I think it was Jose Sanchez or maybe it was Grant who was talking at media night before the Super Bowl, and they
Jose,
asked Travarius Ward also about his success and developing more in his skill, especially into an all pro, into a Pro Bowl player, which were his goals, his personal goals for this season. And they asked him, kind of asking about Steve Wilkes, and he actually himself, swerved and was like, "Hey, a lot of credit goes to Bullocks
yeah,
for how
and
much help he's gotten."
that was
And that was
interesting
like
because people were giving
unprompted
it.
from the reporter. You know what I mean? That was just like him giving that information out. So it definitely does seem like he's helpful. Now, my question for you is, if something they didn't like about Steve Wilkes was that he was more of a DB's guy than a front four, front seven guy, wouldn't they have that same problem with Bullocks? Or do you think because Bullocks, or because he's been in the organization, maybe you feel like that wouldn't be as much of an issue?
I don't think it'd be as much of an issue because you have to. So the issue with Steve Wilkes wasn't necessarily that he was a DB guy, right? It was that he wasn't mirroring or matching the back
Mary.
end. Yeah, mirroring or marrying the back end to the front seven, right? Like he wasn't like it was off like the entire thing. You could see it on film, even on the regular TV. Like you could see that it was frustration. He was having the front seven or the front four do one thing, but that doesn't match what the back end and the seven back seven should be doing. So that was the issue. It wasn't necessarily that he was a secondary guy, just he wasn't putting his linebackers and his D line in the right spots to match the back end. So I think for Daniel Bullock, it would be more so just matching and marrying your front four to your back end. And I think that at the end of the day, that he can do that. The biggest issue, I guess, for internally is no one's called plays internally. But my counterpoint to that was I understand that no one's called plays. D'Amico Ryans didn't call plays before then. Robert Saleh didn't call plays before then. Sometimes not calling plays is a good thing. Like you're trusting your gut at that situation. Look, there you go.
Super
Look,
chat.
there
Okay,
you
it does
go.
work. Ryan
Shout
says,
out to
love the
Ryan.
content, keep up the good work. Thank you
Shout out to
guys. I
Ryan.
really
Shout out to
appreciate it.
Ryan, the first super chat on the show.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ryan. But no,
So now you go get yourself a Starbucks, girl.
there we go. I, I was what was I just thinking? I got
You
so
got too
distracted
excited.
from
You got too
I
excited.
got
What were
I got too excited. It was something about Daniel
Daniel
Bullocks.
Bullock's
Go ahead.
because he was marrying the back end to the front end, like not calling plays. Could be a good thing. Going with your gut
Oh,
and
what I was
trusting what
gonna
you see.
say, there we go. Is I was listening to your show yesterday, and I guess a question that fans could have is, if the 49ers didn't consider Bullocks good enough last year, what, like, if he wasn't ready last year, and that's the reason that they hired, because everyone, even when they hired Steve Wilkes, kind of in the beginning, I think towards the end when it was between him and Fangio, people got pretty behind Steve Wilkes. But I remember in the beginning of the search, people were pretty surprised that they were looking externally. And I think the 49ers narrative was they didn't feel like their internal hires were ready. So do you think that 1 year would have like catapulted that so much? Why do you think all of a sudden the 49ers would have more faith in guys who they didn't trust in just a year ago?
And that's a big question, right? Like if you didn't trust Daniel Bullock's last year or Nick Sorensen last year, like whoever's on the court last year, how can you truly trust him this year? Like I thought I truly 100% I said from the beginning I had heard Daniel Bullocks was the best option for the Niners. That was from a player. Um so to me
Oh,
not
really?
that was from a
Look
player.
at that. Marco
So
has the
for me
insights.
I was confused on why Daniel Bullocks wasn't hired. I was like kind of like shocked. Like, well, if a player is vouching
Yeah.
for example, it kind of very similar. If you go back to the Raiders, right?
I
Look at
was
Max
just thinking
Crosby.
about this.
Max
Yeah.
Crosby pounded the table for Anthony Pierce. Now, Anthony
Mhm.
Pierce not
And
might be the right hire.
prior to that, they were trying to hire he's now the Packers special teams guy, but when
Bisaccia.
yeah, and everyone was shocked that they didn't keep him, and all the players wanted him to keep him, and it was a disaster for them to bring in Josh McDaniels instead.
So
That's
to me,
why speaking of Crosby, didn't he like threaten, he was like, I don't want
Scott,
to, if you guys
I'll leave.
don't. Yeah.
That's crazy. So like when you have players do that, right, or players speaking highly of them, a lot of players speak highly of Daniel Bullocks. What does that mean? Like they're gonna play for you. They're gonna like
Hard,
when
yeah,
you
because they want not only to prove that you're good, but they want to prove themselves right. Like they just, it's like if you're at your own job, think about it, because a lot of, football is a game, but you have to think about your own job. If you recommend your friend or something, you want them to be successful. And if they work under you, you want to do a good job because you want to prove to your boss, whoever you vouch for them for, that what your, word was correct.
Absolutely. So for me, I know that the question was, who do I think it'll be? I think it's Daniel Bullocks. I truly do. And I know Al Bundy has a good question in the chat. He says, "You want your coaches," or a good comment. "You want your coaches to watch their player they are targeting to see if they fit their scheme. So ideally, you want your DC in place." I don't think that's the problem, because when you look at the 49ers, right? Even though Steve Wilks didn't know the defense, they had him run the same scheme that they had. So realistically, is you're drafting for a scheme that's already been in place for the last 8 years or 7, 8 years. So realistically, you're not really hoping that coach could use him in his scheme. It's the same scheme, whatever coach is coming in, based off of what they did to Steve Wilks. I'm guessing they're going the same scheme, just different coach. It's been working for them for the last 4 years. Obviously, they've had a top defense for the last few years, so I don't think that they need the coach to draft the right players for the scheme. Obviously, they already have the scheme in place. And you look at the defense, there's no true position that you need a starter at. Like, well, I guess corner, right? But even then, corner,
Yeah.
it's
Do you think that they're going to try to draft another corner or target one in free agency?
I think they should. Whether it's either
Because
one,
they
like if
were
it,
lucky with, I feel like they were pretty lucky in their secondary with health. I know that obviously Hafunga went down, but having Jair Brown be able to be okay, and then Traverse Ward staying healthy, Diamador Lenore. Like normally, I mean, knock on so much wood, but the 49ers, I feel like there was like a 2 to 3 year period where cornerback specifically was like a issue for them.
I think
Um,
quarterback is always going to be an issue if
just because they
you
don't
can't
like,
develop. But
yeah,
when you get a top corner, it's normally because you drafted that top corner really really high, or he developed really really fast, right? Like you don't see teams draft a corner that often. You don't, though often you don't see, I should say, because you do see it in guys like Jalen Johnson and stuff like that. But you don't see a player get drafted in the second, third round and immediately be an elite corner. Like normally they have to develop into that corner, unless they're drafted in the top 10, then they usually come in and
yeah,
they're already that good. So I think that's why the Niners have struggled at corner, and luckily they signed
their
Charvarius Ward.
development.
Yeah, so like the Charvarius Ward, I believe he was what, undrafted. So when you look at that, like that is an undrafted free
And
agent who
he's the cool thing about Ward, like especially this is so I feel like we're going in between topics a lot here, but you and I have kind of talked about the importance of kind of having a team, yes, kind of wanting to go all in for next year, but also thinking ahead enough that you're focusing on bringing in players that
the
are
big picture.
ascending instead of descending. So I think the 49ers have built their team kind of in this win now mode so much that they do have a majority of their roster that is kind of already peaked. And that's not like, I'm not trying to diss these players, but just they have a more veteran team. Um, so I like that Charvarius Ward kind of has been ascending on the 49ers. Like he's played better for the 49ers than he had for the Chiefs so far.
Absolutely, and that's because
Yeah.
his last year in Kansas City was phenomenal, right? He
Yeah.
developed over the 4 years as an
Yeah.
undrafted free agent. So back to the big picture is the Niners window closing, right? Is the Super Bowl window alive? What is your thoughts on it? Because I know you haven't answered that question but yourself. Is the Niners window closing? Is it open for a few years? What is the situation looking like? Because yes, Brock Purdy is cheap, but how long can Brock Purdy continue that Super Bowl window once he gets paid? Because after year 3, after next year, he's getting an extension. If he
Yeah.
is, the Niners truly love him, he's getting an extension next year. So what at what price in everything does this window stay alive once he's extended at a high price? Like how does that work in from your perspective?
Okay, see, I feel like I love that I can change my mind on this 100 times. So I definitely um agree with the notion that I felt like Brock's rookie contract, at least for this like main core, is like I think they're going to be bring back Juszczyk. I imagine that they'll restructure him, but I see them bringing him back. Eric Armstead, money wise, it doesn't make sense to cut him the way that they've kind of push back his contract. But there's been a lot of guys like I think last week you and I specifically talked about Eric Armstead and how just like performance wise it might be a smart move, and with how much he's going to make, might be a smart move to move off of him. And I imagine that we'll debate these things all off season. But to be honest, because I think especially after such a disappointing Super Bowl loss, I was kind of like, this core isn't going to win it all. Like, this core isn't working. So I feel like there needs to be major shakeups, but a little bit more removed from the Super Bowl and maybe the emotions of it. Just looking at the logistics, I do think, whether or not I agree that this is the right thing to do, I think what the 49ers are going to do is keep this core, or as much of it, together for the entirety of Brock's rookie deal, and really try to go all in and win it all every year that they have, which this would be the last, the upcoming season would be the last season of that with this core. But then I do think that they're going to, whether it's with the guys that they like, I think if they draft well, this draft will be extremely impactful for the 49ers moving forward in future years, past the main core, past George Kittle, past Eric Armstead, past Juszczyk, like those guys, past even maybe Deebo Samuel. I think that it would be smart for them to potentially look at bringing in a wide receiver. I don't in the draft. I do think maybe they had the right idea with Danny Gray. Now, Danny Gray doesn't have that good of hands. I know even in practice he was kind of struggling to catch the ball, but I think that they could kind of go for someone who can take the top off. I think they're going to want to extend Ayuk. To ask your window question, I think they're going to have one more year. I don't think that they're going to try to break it up this offseason. I think they're going to, even if I was listening back to when John Lynch was asked, like, is extending Ayuk a priority on the exit interviews that they just had a week ago. The first thing out of John Lynch's mouth was, it's a priority to try to keep as much of us together as possible. And then he paused and he said, we did pick up Ayuk's 5th-year option, and then paused again and then said, we want to keep everyone together. And so for me, what I'm thinking is that kind of gave me a hint that maybe John Lynch might be like, you can play on your freaking 5th-year deal, Ayuk. Like, we don't like to extend people until the end of their contract. We picked up your 5th-year deal. We are going to try to keep all of these people together. And the way that we see that possible is you playing for, your $14 million. But I do think that this upcoming year, when we talk about a window, we're going to have one more year with this core. And then I also think, especially after that, I'm so easily influenced. I think listening to the Ethan Strauss, Guy Haberman interview that I just was listening to, I think it's hard, right, to have perspective on Brock Purdy. I think as 49er fans, we've, felt the getting excited about Jimmy G and then kind of seeing that crash and burn. But he's a really big Brock Purdy fan, and he's kind of more of a basketball fan, so he can have like a little bit of a less like emotional stance on things. And I know a lot of times the 49ers have been like referred to by like Nick Wright as like Brock Purdy has the Avengers around him, like all of his offensive weapons. But what Strauss was saying is like, actually, if you look back at that Super Bowl, if you watch that JTL Sullivan breakdown, there were a lot of times where wide receivers weren't getting open. And obviously that they were going against the Chiefs, who have two, not every team that you have is going to have two excellent cornerbacks. And also Ayuk did get open a lot, but he was in a situation where he was the 3rd or 4th option a lot of times. And with an offensive line that's breaking down in seconds, Brock Purdy couldn't always get there. Now, obviously some things are on Brock Purdy, but what I'm trying to say is I think the 49ers will extend Brock Purdy, and I think that will start a new window. But I do think that there's going to be one more for this core. But when they look at drafting and when they look at, I want to say more so drafting, I think when they look at free agency, they could still look for guys who are just like 1 year, like just try to get you over the edge for the 2024 season. But I think when they look towards the future, they are going to see Brock Purdy as that guy for right now. Obviously, I'm not saying that that'll be it forever, and I think that it is fair to there is an in between, right? Like you can think Brock Purdy is good without thinking he's the very best, and I think I don't want to be stuck in a situation where the 49ers are kind of like the Cowboys, where you have to keep extending uh Dak Prescott because he's a good quarterback, potentially a top 10 quarterback, definitely, in the 15 to 10 range. 15 to 8 range. He's a good quarterback. But is he going to win you the Super Bowl? Maybe not. But when you're the Cowboys, you're like, and when you're the 49ers, it's like, do I want to like literally start over and risk not even getting to the playoffs? And when you think about these owners, I know I've had some comments being like, Jed York doesn't care about Super Bowls as much as he
Mm-hmm.
cares about home playoff games and just having fans in seats. Now, I think that Brock Purdy has the ability to develop to even a better quarterback than Dak Prescott. I don't think he's ever going to be a Mahomes type or anything like that, but I do think there is something to saying, he is having unbelievable success, and I think it's fair to be hesitant on like crowning him the way that some people have, while also giving him credit for I think if, for example, if with Joe Burrow, I know like Rich Madrid kind of gets on Joe Burrow, right? And is like, Joe Burrow's not that great. But the
He
majority of
was
people
wrong.
would put, yeah, but the majority of people, and I think even Rich Madrid would put Joe Burrow within like the top 3 to 5 quarterbacks in the NFL range. Well, what a lot of people don't do when they look at Joe Burrow is say, yeah, well, look at his receivers. He has, one of the two best receivers in an amazing offense and a great defense, and they don't. But when Jake Browning was in there, like imagine Joe Burrow didn't work out, and that team had just drafted Drake Browning, and Drake Browning had success. I think people would be much more likely to attribute the success of the Bengals if it was under a guy like Jake Browning, who would have been drafted lower. They would have been much more likely to attribute that success to the weapons around them. Where if Brock Purdy was a higher pick, I think that there's something when you're drafted lower, fans automatically they don't want to believe it. And so they try to go, okay, like why is this happening? And I'm speaking in circles, but is there a lot of instances where quarterbacks, depending on where they're playing, play much differently? Because that's kind of the thing with Brock Purdy, right? Like if he was on another team, would he play so much worse? When I thought about the Ethan Strauss kind of brought this up, and it made me think, and I was thinking of Jared Goff, right? Like people kind of talked about Jared Goff at the Rams and were like, he would suck if it wasn't for McVay like feeding him the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he went to the Lions, and he's not like, I don't think Jared Goff is like a top 10 or top
But
5
he's playing
quarterback,
really well.
but I think he's like playing as good. I think he's pretty much who we thought he was when he was with the Rams. And
But the
so
thing is,
if
though, is
Brock
when he
Purdy
went
went
to
to
the,
another team, would he be that much worse? Or do you like, I think we can kind of believe that Brock Purdy is a good quarterback.
he's definitely a good quarterback. That's definitely that's not an argument, right? Like he's a good quarterback.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
it's more so, is he a great quarterback? That's the thing. We know he's a good quarterback. Is he a great quarterback? That's what we don't know. And we saw a year of great play, like we truly did. But
Yeah.
now when you compare him to guys like Jared Goff, right? In this instance of he got traded to a team who didn't have a great roster. They built a roster around him. They built
Yeah.
a great O line. They've got 2 good running backs. They got a good receiver, a great tight end, or
The
actually a great
keyword, they
receiver, a
built
great
it
tight end.
around him, right? To
They
like
built it around him.
lift him up,
So
for sure.
they made it where they found his strengths and they built it on his strengths, right?
Yeah.
He's not going to be a quarterback that'll ever win a Super Bowl. He's not. Like we
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
that. Like we know, like for example, when we played the Lions, what were
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
thoughts? Like
That was like it was well.
let Jared Goff beat us. Like that was our answer, right? Like it was let Jared Goff beat us because we know who he is. And I think a similar question could be answered about Brock,
Brock
right? And they're
Purdy.
similar in the sense of you want that quarterback to beat you, not the weapons beat you. Right? Yeah, that makes sense because, like, for example,
Yeah.
if you let Christian McCaffrey go explosive, the Niners offense is much different. If Debo's going crazy, the offense is going crazy. And same for Ayuk. So when you look at it, is you got to answer the question of if Brock Purdy was traded to another team, he doesn't come with Kyle Shanahan. He doesn't come with the playmakers he has. So is that team going to make him successful? Are they going to do what makes him good? Are they going to implement the offense that he truly enjoys to run? And that's over the middle anticipation throws against man. He struggled. We could look at and there's 3 instances off the top of my head where he's played top defenses and he struggled, whether that's in the rain or not. It does not matter when it comes to rain. You got to be able to, you're going to play you're outdoors, you're playing football, it's going to rain. The Baltimore game, Cleveland Browns game, and then the Kansas City game. Those defenses that said, you know what, let's go man, let's go zone. Offense was looking good in the first half. As soon as they
Can
go
I say
man,
that I think that in the Super Bowl, I think that Brock Purdy played pretty good against man. I think Debo could not get open in any way. Debo is my favorite player. I've had so much trouble with the Debo Ayuk talks because I agree. Like I think everyone else is right, but I have such a favoritism towards Debo. But that Super Bowl was extremely disappointing from Debo, especially like because we know he does have the ability to take over games. It makes it even more disappointing that he didn't, wasn't able to do that in this Super Bowl. I kind of felt like the 49ers lost the 2019 Super Bowl because they didn't give the ball to Debo. And then they lost this game because they tried to give Debo the ball too
too
much.
much. Yeah.
Where and I think Brock Purdy was navigating closing pockets and receivers not getting open pretty well. I was honestly really disappointed with Kyle Shanahan and his losing battle to Spags. I felt like he didn't have a lot of man beater options that he was
And
giving Brock Purdy.
so when I rewatch Brock, so what I mean by he struggled against the man, he
Yeah,
tends to step into the pocket when he has a clean pocket against the man because his
yeah,
timing's off now. Like he normally likes to hit that back foot and let it rip, like, and that's into
yeah.
throwing into windows against the zone, right? And that's what as he's known for his anticipation. So when I was watching him in the Super Bowl and I rewatched it, it was a lot of man in the second half, and he was struggling to put the ball into tight windows. Like they're forcing, and I want to say struggling, but they forced him to put the ball into tight windows. And he obviously second half he played pretty well, but they were doing that on purpose because that's not his strength, right?
That makes sense. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not what he could do. It's not you're not gonna when you play against man, you got to have a stronger arm and fit it into tighter windows. And I think at the end of the day, they wanted to do that on purpose. Even though Spagnola's truly is giving him all this praise. Spags is giving him praise, but I don't think it's
You
meant.
can believe it.
I don't believe it. I truly don't. I'm not sold on Brock, and I've been saying this. I think he's a really
Yeah.
good quarterback.
When
The
you
Niners,
said the thing about Jared Goff just now, I think you've also and I'm not trying to. I think you've said this on our streams before, at least. I You struggle to think if Brock Purdy will ever win a Super Bowl as well, right?
yeah, because
Yeah.
as a team, right? When you're playing, when you're looking at a team,
Green
right?
tone or great tone 70
765.
706.5 agrees with you and says Purdy ain't it my G. Casey was happy to let Purdy throw the rock, so he agrees with you for sure.
And when you look at it, for me, it's more so when you're having Brock Purdy play as an opposing team. Now, there's 2 different ways you can look at it. You want Brock Purdy to beat you because they have great weapons, or you want Brock Purdy to beat you because you don't think he's that good. There's 2 different ways you can look at it. Great weapons, in my opinion, I think that's the part I would lean towards because he has great weapons. You don't want his weapons to go crazy. But it's also too, I've never from the beginning of the season, I didn't think the Niners were going to win the Super Bowl because
Yeah,
of Brock Purdy. I thought it was, you know what, Brock's gonna have to learn on the fly. He's gonna have a good season. If as long as he plays like last year, we'll be contenders. But we're at a point where the window's open as long as Kyle Shanahan's here. I don't care what people say. Oh, as long as Brock Purdy's here, I don't agree. The reason why I say that is because Kyle Shanahan did it with Jimmy Garoppolo. He got to that point with Jimmy Garoppolo.
yeah.
How
That's
did Jimmy Garoppolo look as soon as he went to the Raiders?
yeah, I guess if I'm asking you for people who look way different, you're like the
Right?
49ers have a really good example of one of those.
So It's funny. I got Albert Torres and Great Tone
Yeah, I
in the
see this.
chat. Go.
Albert Torres says, "I knew you'd be here, Great Tone." LOL. And then Great Tone says, "My arch nemesis." Hi guys.
Some of the Clutch Gene
Glad that you
guys.
guys
Um,
could join us. Um, how are you guys doing? Really quick, Al Bundy says Kyle could have should get you should get paid for you, cuz. Really quickly. Am I stupid at reading?
you
You
should get
should
paid
get
for your
paid for
cause.
you for your cause.
I don't know.
For
Sounds
sure.
right.
Yes. We
Sounds
should
right.
always get paid. I agree. 49ers should start paying us to talk about them. Their salary cap went up. Uh, really quick, Al Bundy says that Kyle could have ran more crossing patterns and he didn't. And that's kind of like what I'm talking about. I do think I understand what you're saying. Like Brock Purdy obviously has his limitations, but I do think in these games where we've pointed out Brock Purdy struggling, Kyle Shanahan has also called uncharacteristically poor games. But I agree with
Absolutely. I
you that
agree.
I think as long as like even if I don't think they're going to do this. I think they're going to extend Brock Purdy and he's going to be the quarterback for a little whether or not it's 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. I think he'll be around, maybe not 10. But unless he does, keep up this what he did last year, then he could be around for 10 years. But I imagine that he'll play this year and then get an extension for, 3 to 4 years, whatever. But I agree with you. Even if they weren't to do that, if they were to go abort ship and get someone else in the draft or trade for whatever, I think if the 49ers have Kyle Shanahan, they have a chance to win the Super Bowl for sure.
And as
I
long as
agree.
you have a great play caller and a great defense, you're going to be contending. And Kyle Shanahan, they're actually the 33rd team. They ranked Kyle Shanahan as the best play caller in the NFL. And I saw that this morning. They actually had it was. Let me go ahead and find it. 33rd team. It was Kyle
Really?
Shanahan at 1, and then I believe it was. So it goes like this in order: Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Andy Reid, Mike McDaniel, Matt LaFleur. What's crazy is 4 of those guys run the
Are
Kyle
all from
Shanahan
the
offense. The
yeah,
top 5
yeah,
is Kyle
Kyle
Shanahan
Shanahan.
offense. Um, I disagree with the list. I think Andy Reid's number 1, but it's also he has the best quarterback of all time, probably.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's kind of like, how do
It's
you
kind of shitty,
truly
like poor
do you
Andy
give?
Reid. He's like, I'm doing like generational stuff, but I don't get the credit because I have Patrick Mahomes. But he's not complaining about that. And then really quick, in the comments, they're kind of arguing between Brock Purdy being mediocre and it being Kyle Shanahan's
Oh, they'll
fault,
go
and
at it.
no
They'll
one
go
else
at it
thinks
for a
that
while. Great
they
Tone and Albert will go at it for a while right now. Watch.
there you go. There you
Uh,
go. If you were to assign more blame for the Super Bowl loss, and this has nothing to do with like the future and who you think is more responsible for the Super Bowl window being open, but do you personally blame more of Kyle Shanahan or more of Brock Purdy?
I think more of Kyle, but I'm gonna put a asterisk on it in a sense. So Kyle did call too many man beaters for Debo Samuel. Like that's not the go-to guy. But it's also too is how many times did we see Brock Purdy go off of the play but not go to his first read because he liked the matchup with Brandon Ayuk and whoever was on him, like against man. Like we always like there was times where Kyle came out into the press conference and praised how he'll call a play and Brock Purdy finds the mismatch, even though the first read was Debo Samuel or George Kittle. He finds Brandon Ayuk and he makes a great play out of a bad play call. He said that multiple times on press conferences. They've asked Brock Purdy about that throughout the season. He said it's just kind of an instinct, kind of understanding what the defense is doing to me, understanding how good of a team and offense I have in going through things. So it's like I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, Brandon Ayuk's your best man-to-man receiver. You know he's getting open, but you're still throwing it to Debo, who isn't a great separator against man. Like at some point, you gotta like think, hey, you
Adjust
know
to that.
what,
Yeah.
Kyle, you gotta go to the sideline. Hey, Kyle, can I get some man beaters for Brandon Ayuk being my primary? Or you don't even go through your one right away, knowing Debo's not going to be open, and go to your 2, which was George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk. Like you could do that. You're the quarterback. You're the one.
Yeah.
As soon as the ball's in your hands, it's
And
you.
do you think like throughout their relationship growing that Kyle Shanahan will give Purdy a longer leash to do that? Because it's possible that Purdy just doesn't feel comfortable or like allowed to do that
I
yet.
mean, he did it throughout the season where
That's true. You're right.
the
Like he's
play
done it and
was,
it
and
worked out
Kyle's
and he
praised
fell
him.
on him. So maybe it was Purdy getting him in his own kind
What
of
I
head and trying to
what I
be more
truly
conservative.
think what I truly think what happened though is not necessarily he was getting conservative, was the 49ers greats, guys like Steve Young and Joe Montana told Brock Purdy, don't do too much. Just do what the offense tells you. Trust Kyle and do what the offense tells you, right? Kind of handicaps you
Which
when
is
you,
like okay to an extent. I kind of think
because
I think to win a Super Bowl, you need someone who can go above just the offense. And that isn't a diminishing statement to Kyle Shanahan. I think he's going to do the majority of the work to get you there, but there's going to be that 1 to 2 plays where you need your quarterback. The same thing for the Chiefs, right? Like Andy Reid's going to put you in the position to get as good as you can, but he's going to need Patrick Mahomes. Even on the games where Patrick Mahomes is mostly doing the game manager thing, there's 1 or 2 plays where he's going to have to do something with Kelsey or whatever. And I think you and I both talked about that before the Super Bowl, that Brock Purdy would
Mhm.
need to do something like that in order to win, especially going against a guy like Mahomes.
It's like during the Super Bowl, you gotta have your, as a quarterback or a big player, you gotta have your Super Bowl moment. It's kind of like the Heisman moment, like where every year that player who wins the Heisman has their Heisman moment, like that game where it's like that was his Heisman moment.
Yeah.
And you gotta have that Super Bowl moment, and unfortunately, Brock didn't have it. Now it's promising to see Brock Purdy in his first full season do what he did, but at the same time, it's like you have to have everything go right again. Like you have to have your offense humming, which one of the best offenses we had in a very long time. Our defense played lights out that game, and we couldn't get it done. Then, to be honest, it's when your quarterback and your offensive coordinator, head coach, can't score more than 20 points. That's an issue. Like when you're going into overtime and you've only scored 19, you got to kick a field goal to get 22. That's an issue. Like, where's your high explosive offense at that is supposed to win games? For example, the Brock Purdy pass to Jawan Jennings, where he was getting, or Chris Jones is coming down, no one blocked him. That's a throw an elite quarterback makes. And I hate saying that. Like, I hate because it makes me sound like a hater. But there's fans who voted. Jesse Naylor put out a poll. He put out a poll saying, is Brock Purdy elite? 60+% said yes. Okay, well, if we're going off of what the Niner fans think, if he's elite, that throw needs to be made. Because most other quarterbacks who are elite is making that throw with pressure in his face on his back foot just off of pure arm talent.
Can I ask you, okay, if I put obviously Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, what are other guys that you would put ahead of Brock Purdy?
In the NFL right now,
Yeah, for elite, like if we're talking about elite quarterbacks.
I'm going to go Joe Burrow. I think Justin Herbert's up there.
You think
Lamar,
Justin Herbert is
I
above
think Justin,
Brock Purdy?
yeah, I think Justin Herbert's the better quarterback.
Maybe
Just because he's
talent
not, just because he's
wise.
not winning doesn't mean he's not a
Yeah,
better
yeah.
quarterback, right? Like
Okay.
we look at
Do you
Justin
think
Herbert since he's been into the league, his offense has scored the most points in the NFL, and his
yeah,
defenses have given up even more
been
points than his
crazy?
offense ever scored. So it's like can't play defense. I mean, it's not his fault.
God damn it. What the heck, Justin Herbert? Get on the field and start making those stops.
So for
Um,
me, so going back, he should play middle linebacker and safety at the same time. Uh,
a real elite quarterback would go out there and stop them from scoring too, okay?
um,
Do
so
you really
obviously
quick
Mahomes, Allen,
total side note really quick, do you think with hardball they'll make it to the playoffs this year? Chargers?
they should, but I don't know. Greg Roman's offense. Greg Roman came out and said he needs to run the ball with Justin Herbert. Yeah, run the ball with Justin Herbert, but please use Justin Herbert the right way. Don't use them
Jesus.
like
I know. Why did they hire Greg? Watch us be dumb, and the freaking Chargers are going to be like in the Super Bowl. But yeah, I think hiring Jim Harbaugh makes them kind of automatic contenders. I don't know if that's like too.
I think that's
Because
too
I agree with you. I
outlandish.
think Justin Herbert is elite, and that they just need some
Wait,
small
you
tweaks.
question? Hold on, you question me
Well,
about
I
if I
just
think
wanted you
Justin
to be.
Herbert's
I just
elite?
wanted to make sure. I just wanted to make sure. I just wanted to make
Uh,
sure.
so I would go. So Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow. I think Lamar Jackson's up there. Um,
Okay. Side
see,
note. Again, I know I've made so many side notes. When I'm saying with the Justin Herbert thing, I guess my issue with the Brock Purdy thing is I don't like I think if Justin Herbert was on the 49ers, that would he have been better than Brock Purdy this year? Maybe looks wise, like maybe when you were watching the game, you would have been like, oh, the quarterback is more responsible for the wins. But like the 49ers were already like number one in every statistical category possible. I can imagine Justin Herbert losing 2 or 3 games. Like he's had some games where he's like last minute on the last drive throwing an interception, and maybe that's his receivers. I think Austin Eckler is a little bit overrated, but and maybe properly rated now. Actually, I think people do give him a decently hard time. But there was I think there were some time periods where people overvalued him. But like, I think if Justin Herbert was on the 49ers, maybe the 49ers won the Super Bowl, or maybe they just would have gotten there. Like, I think the outcome would have been similar. Is that
I don't
fair? Or do
I don't
you
think
think
so
they would have
because
won the Super Bowl?
I think if you have Justin Herbert, he's making that throw to Jennings on that third down, and Jennings is walking into the end zone.
Yeah, and he has the athleticism,
And
so he could
he's
he
and we've
could do the
seen
same pressure thing. Yeah.
him make that throw. So it's like he can make every throw on the field. It's just unfortunately he hasn't had a team around him defensively. Like if you give Justin Herbert a top 5 defense, his offense is every
Yeah.
year scoring points. Like his offense is never
And
it's never
I don't want people to take this as I think that Herbert is way better than Brock Purdy. I'm just saying that the output that has happened with Brock Purdy on the team is elite. Whether or not he is elite, what they have done is elite. But I understand that that's hard to like get too excited about because we saw similarities with Jimmy G. And I think maybe that's your point is like, yeah, it was good they got to the Super Bowl, but they did that with Jimmy G.
yeah. I mean, I see Albert's comment saying he disagrees because he doesn't think Justin could run Kyle's offense. I highly disagree. He would cook in Kyle's offense. Like
I
absolutely go berserk in Kyle's offense. Kyle thought,
if
so for example, people
if
thought so
how much would Kyle Shanahan like if Kyle Shanahan calls hardball, would never happen in real life, and says, we'll give you Brock Purdy. Is he Ayuk and Nick Bosa? Are the Chargers taking that? And is Kyle Shanahan doing that deal for Justin Herbert?
yeah, that's too
Or is that
much.
way too
But
much?
I think
Too much? Brock Purdy and Ayuk?
you do it. Nah,
Ayuk is
even if you throw Nick in there, I think like if you get yourself a top 5 quarterback, you got to
yeah.
do it. Like because every year,
That's what I'm saying. Like if you have all 3 of those, I want to ask this. I'm going to ask this on Twitter later. So I want
I mean, it's too
to be
much because
clear.
you're including
If
Nick
it's
Bosa. But like, let's say for example, it was Brock
so Kyle
Purdy.
would say no? You think Kyle would say?
Yeah,
I
I think
think
Nick
Kyle might
Bosa's the
fucking do it.
I think Nick Bosa's a deal breaker. I think you can't because you also got to you got to keep your top defense. Like you can't just
Okay,
get rid
okay.
of him and then because it's gonna seem situation like you're
My
gonna have a
thing is
bad
like it
defense
depends on who you see. It depends on who you value more. Because I
and this is
told Fred
hypothetical.
Warner,
This is
I
hypothetical
have
for everyone. Just like this is hypothetical as
yeah, it's
putting
super
like a
hypothetical.
just wanting
Super.
to
We're
mess
just doing
around.
a thought experiment that I thought of on random. Um, Edge rushers are worth more. I really value Fred Warner, but what if it was Brock Purdy, Brandon Ayuk, and Fred Warner? Is Kyle giving up that for Justin Herbert?
No, because Dre Greenlaw's hurt.
Yeah,
If Dre Greenlaw was
yeah.
healthy, it's like okay, now you have like the opportunity to like, all right, well, Dre Greenlaw just replaces Fred, but no, I think no, you can't.
What would Kyle give up?
I think you would give up Brock Purdy 2 first rounders, like maybe even
So
3.
just draft picks.
Yeah, just I mean, you don't really see player for player trades anyways. Like it's kind of harder to make player for player trades, but it would be like some outrageous 3 first round picks in Brock Purdy probably, and I think Niners would if that was the offer, the Niners would say yeah, like because you're getting the quarterback that the Niners were hoping to get when they traded up back to 3. So like you're
That's an interesting one. Like, because I think people when they have this debate, they talk about literally just like swap for swap, like quarterback, like which quarterback is better. And you're saying that Justin Herbert is so much better that the 49ers would have to give up like way more.
I think
It's
they
just
would
Brock Purdy.
because
Which
he's
I'm not
proven.
disagreeing with. I just think that, like, puts the conversation in perspective when people are talking about value. You know what I mean?
We
Like,
also got
people
to put
will
into
rank
fact.
quarterbacks without, like, actually, like, being like, "Okay, well, in a real life scenario for a trade, what like, even let's say we're starting a new team, what would the new team would want Justin Herbert 10 out of 10 times, right?"
Yeah, the new team would want Herbert 10. Like when you look at it, Justin Herbert's proven he's a top quarterback for multiple years. Like it's not like just a 1 year thing. Like right, his rookie year he came in and he would threw 31 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, like for 4,000 yards. Like he came in right away and was just boom, like that good. We saw that with Brock too, but we've only seen it for 1 year. We've seen it for 4 years now with Justin Herbert. So for me, I definitely think it's one of those ones where if Kyle could get his hands on something like that, he would. And this is super hypothetical. So I'm not saying like Kyle prefers Justin Herbert over Brock Purdy. I don't know how he thinks or how he feels. Um, but it's definitely a good
I'm saying that.
conversation. Like
I
you
think
could
Kyle
say that.
I
I'm
think
not gonna
Kyle
say
would say that.
it because
But Kyle is conservative, so maybe,
like
maybe not, but
Kyle also probably thinks Kirk Cousins is one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play. So like
yeah, yeah,
so like it's truly like
yeah.
what do we when we think about what Kyle really thinks, like what do we really think? Because Kyle is truly a big Kirk Cousins fan, and I think that's
Now, I
something.
will say, I don't think that Purdy is smarter than Justin Herbert.
I mean, I
I also
would.
I think
That's a good point. I mean, Purdy's best quality, and this
I
is
think
something
his
that's interesting
yeah.
because when people talk Purdy, right, what's the first thing they mention? His
This guy says,
IQ.
"Bro, those numbers are exactly what Brock Purdy did."
Those numbers are exactly what Brock Purdy did. I agree, but he followed it up with a 38 touchdown season with 5,000 yards. So Brock better follow up this year with 5,000 yards and 38 touchdowns and be a really elite quarterback and making every throw on the field. Like I said, I'm not his first year he came in. People forget like this past year of Justin Herbert was his super down year. Like he didn't look like himself, but he also had like a torn ligament in his finger. So we also got to put in the fact that Brock needs to do this another couple of years to be like, all right, he's up there
Consistency.
with these. Yeah, like you can't.
Yeah.
There's a
Like,
thing
even
with
Al Bundy pointed out, Kirk Cousins. I think that Kirk Cousins' greatest skill isn't necessarily that he's, like, super elite, but the fact that he's, like, consistently been good is impressive for the NFL.
absolutely. So I truly think the window's open. Even though I'm saying like I don't think Brock's as good as Justin Herbert, I think it's open with Brock. And what that means to me is Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy are capable of creating an explosive offense. But I have found a website that kind of tells it personnel tendencies and stuff like that. And I would truly like Kyle to go more 11 personnel. So I mean, one
Yes.
running back, one tight end. Um, so that truly means
Does
maybe
that
getting
mean
rid of
bye-bye you Juszczyk?
Juice. Yes,
Yeah.
it's an aging,
I feel like
expensive
they're just
player.
not gonna make that move right now, like, solely I feel like he's Kyle's friend, and they're gonna allow him to restructure for a cheap enough number that they feel like they can keep him around.
I could be Kyle's probably like besties for the resties, but
Yes.
looking at
By the
Juice's
way,
numbers,
I think by next week we might have some more like offensive line people that we want to talk about with the draft coming up on Tuesday. Because I know a lot of people in here are also talking about the O-line being really important. I imagine that they're going to use that first round pick since they're not going to be trading for Justin Herbert. Unfortunately, don't think that that's going to be the thing that
what position
that
do
the
they pick?
Chargers are going to try to do. Um,
You think it's a line?
I think that they're going to use their first round pick on an O lineman, don't you?
I don't know. I'm not sold on it. Like, so
What?
look, and I've been trying to
They
argue. I'm gonna
better.
argue this. I'm not. No,
Oh
I'm
my
not
god,
necessarily
fans are
arguing
gonna
this.
riot in the streets.
Check this out. So I have 9 first round grades on offensive linemen. Right?
Yeah.
They all probably won't go in that first round. But just because I have 9 first round grades, I don't know what the Niners have, right? So when I'm looking at it, there's 9 players that could go in the first round. Probably 7 of them go before the Niners draft. After that, there'll probably be a few that are there, right? Do the Niners value an offensive tackle at 31 or someone who falls in the draft because of all these offensive tackles going, right? If they have, for example, Byron Murphy from Texas, for some reason, I don't think he falls.
Yeah. But
I
just
highly don't. But for
hypothetical scenario.
hypothetical, if he falls and he's there, Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama, cornerback. If he falls,
Yeah,
like
everyone in the chat is
you
kind of with you.
it's you
Cornerback,
kind of got to
cornerback.
go best player available in my opinion. And if it's not,
D line would be crazy, dude. They always
wouldn't be shocked. I mean, Byron Murphy is a
it is so a
tackle.
49ers move to do that too.
So
I
for
don't
me, like
know.
I definitely would.
I'm not saying like if there's a good player, I understand it being, but it's just it feels like so important for them to finally put some value in there. But
Kingsley
if you're
Suamataya.
saying there's 9 guys, do you think that it's possible if a guy does fall, they could use that first round pick on a non offensive lineman and that there would still be quality offensive linemen left for their second round pick or no?
Not at 63, but you got
Trade
guys
up.
like
Do a
I
trade up.
wouldn't trade up
They
at
should
60.
fucking get rid of any third round pick they have. Trade up. You don't need your third round picks anymore. The Eagles have enough practice squad players.
They're gonna
And
get a
like
running
you
back
guys
in the
don't
third round.
understand that joke. The
Relax. They're getting
Eagles
a
just
running back in
signed
the third
all of
round.
our practice players. Any guy that we've ever signed or drafted in the third round is now on the Eagles.
So I definitely would like when you look at it, like it just depends on best player available. I truly think Kingsley Suamataya is a much better player than the 31st pick. Like I think he's, in my opinion, I have him top 20. Like that, I truly think he could be a top tackle in the NFL. Um, a lot of the linemen in this draft class are really talented. Guys that could fall or guys that are Mims, Amario Mims, Tyler Guyton, but they don't have the experience. So it's like, does Kyle trust a non-experienced tackle to take at 31? Like they're the extreme talents there, but it's like their film has inconsistency. There's a lack of film to go with that. So it's at 31, you definitely want it to be an offensive tackle, but it's also if the Niners draft based off of need, that's where they get in trouble, right? Like for example, like if I'm telling like if Kool-Aid is a Kool-Aid McKinstry is a high player on their draft board, is a lot higher than the offensive lineman at 31, and they take that offensive lineman and Kool-Aid becomes a top corner after falling into the second round.
Yeah,
Everyone's
that was
like, we because then that becomes 2020 hindsight, and everyone's like, you should have took X, Y, and Z. But it's like
yeah.
everyone is pounding the table to take that offensive lineman. So for me, I personally think it's Kingsley. He's a phenomenal offensive tackle, could play both sides off the left and right tackle. That's who I'm pounding the table for. But if they don't, I don't mind the Niners overdrafting in the second round, which necessarily wouldn't be an overdraft. But I think Roger Rosengarten out of the University of Washington, he has a third round grade for me, and picking at in the late second is essentially making sure you just take him so the next time you pick, he's not gone. So for me, I definitely think they could go offensive tackle with their second pick. Um, but I'm truly the Niners got to upgrade their offensive line. Obviously,
Yeah.
that's been an issue for them for the past few years. But as soon as they upgrade the offensive line, if Brock Purdy can't win it, what's the issue? Because I've heard all this whole time, right, that it's the reason why we lost the Super Bowl was because of our offensive line.
Really quick,
And
this is not true.
I think it was.
No.
I think it was. First half of that game, it was phenomenal how we got to the after the quarterback.
I think they made good second half adjustments.
I think they made
Uh,
great second half adjustments too, but it's also when I look at pressures and or like sacks and stuff like that, I look at things in terms of was the quarterback's pocket clean when he stepped up into the pocket? Did he have the opportunity to slide? I thought Brock walked into a few pressures and a few opportunities where he shouldn't have. I thought he could have stayed back and relaxed into the pocket. And I think that's more timing and using his anticipation that caused him to walk into pressure. Mahomes just didn't walk into the pressure. He was actually sitting back, and when he had to move, he moved. So I think it's a little bit of both. You could
more
argue that,
fluid.
yeah, you could not necessarily more fluid, just he was more relaxed. I thought Brock was kind of like
Yeah.
pushing, like or pressing at the line. So
Or almost the
just
opposite, like almost not pressing enough. Like I don't even know what you call that. Like how you said it. It did seem like Mahomes was very comfortable for the moment, and that Brock Purdy maybe felt a little bit of the don't turn the ball over pressure, you know?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't think he was
absolutely.
as I think he was a little more risk averse than I wish he was, which is kind of crazy, right? Because I think the idea going into the game was like, don't make any mistakes, but it's like almost paralyzed him a little bit in certain moments.
I get what you're
I don't
saying.
know. That's
I,
just
I
my
do
take on it.
want I do want to address the Leroy's comment.
My dad,
Yeah,
my dad
this is
loves Kyle.
he
That
loves
like the
juice.
when I literally started my channel, like the first video that I ever did, my dad was like, "You need to make a video on Kyle Juszczyk."
So this is
Yeah,
interesting because Niners could save 6 million, 6 point something on Kyle Juszczyk, right?
yeah.
Kyle Juszczyk is super important to Kyle's offense, but
He was
the way
only
I'm
on he was only on the field for 40%, 43% of the plays. He only touched the ball 23 times, including the playoffs, all last season.
and if you look at every year since 2021, his usage percent has gone down from 56 in 2021, 50 in 22, 46 last year. Now, when I'm looking at the Niners offense, right, there's two ways I look at it. The Niners offense is super explosive. They're running a lot of 21 personnel, 22 personnel is what Kyle likes to run a little bit more. It's it's what he's better. It's what his offense is better at in terms of EPA, which is expected points added for passing. They're better at out of 22 personnel. But think about if the Niners went away from Kyle Juszczyk, how much more explosive they could be going 11 personnel with Jawan Jennings on the field as their third receiver more often. Keeping
Yeah,
Jawan Jennings, now you're
more
allowed to
important.
Brock Purdy, right? We talk about how good Brock Purdy is. How much better could Brock Purdy be with another receiver
Yeah,
on the field who is actually a really, really good receiver, a really good run blocker, allows you
yeah.
to do, for example, looking at Sean
Jennings
McVay.
is cool because he's like a bigger guy, so he does like take up. He's almost like a tight end a little bit in some
So he
ways.
has the mentality of a tight end for sure. Like
Yeah,
blocking
yeah,
wise, he's phenomenal blocking. But if you look at Sean McVay, right? Sean McVay went away from the 21 and 22 personnel, and he's normally in 11 and 12, but he uses his Ben Skoranek as a blocker and he uses them in motions and cracking back and doing the stuff that Juice does. I think Jennings could be that guy in terms of allowing your offense to be more explosive, less predictable, because now you could just go straight pass with Brock Purdy. You're giving him
yeah.
Jennings. Jennings as a receiver 3 is a
They
mismatch
put
for
his did
anyone.
they put the second year tender on him already, or because
They
I saw
have
that
it. They
going
should.
on, but I saw the like requirements for it going around on Twitter last night, right? Did you see that? Tom
Yeah, yeah. So
Pelissero put it out.
you could do it up and I think it's there's like a date, but it's they don't have to do it immediately. I think they should put a second round
Is
tender on
there a
them.
reason that why they wouldn't do it right away? Like, are they just trying to get all their options together?
I'm not sure on how that works. I don't know if it takes it right away as soon as you put the second round tender, if that comes out of your cap. I don't know how that works truly. Unless he has to sign the tender in order
Because
for it
I
to
think keeping him is a especially with the I and like I said, I do anticipate whether it's forcing him to play on that fifth year option or it is extending him, whatever it is. I do think that some way, somehow, Ayuk and Debo are both going to be on this team at least for this year. I think in the 2025 season is when they're going to make important adjustments. But I think if they are looking at the future at all and anticipating a maybe Debo trade away or even an Ayuk trade away, I think having a guy like Jennings, on the team, I think especially this year, he stepped it up. He's always been a really good wide receiver 3. I kind of saw him in that Kendrick Bourne role, obviously more of a blocker than Kendrick Bourne, but just like mentality wise.
Mhm.
But I felt like this year, when he was given more opportunity, he really shined.
I can
So
see
I
that.
think if they can keep him,
But
I
you
agree with
also
keeping him. Now with Juice though, my only thing is I don't think that they're gonna have to make a big decision on him because can't they kind of like ask him to restructure, but in a way that it's like either restructure or we're gonna cut you because we save like $6 million if we cut you.
they could and say, hey, we want to restructure and it could drop
Yeah,
your cap
like it's
numbers.
not really gonna be like maybe I
You
don't know,
could absolutely.
maybe Kyle won't want to do that because they're friends, but I feel like just from like a business perspective, it doesn't really seem like Juice has an option.
Well, he's gonna be 33, so it's like you also don't want to start pushing money back with fullbacks. Like
True.
then you look
True,
at
true,
it, the
true.
Niners run the ball better out of 11 personnel in terms of EPA, out of
Yeah, because
running
you
the
were
ball.
just
So it's like
advocating for doing less 22, more 11. So,
exactly. So for me, it's definitely they ran 11 personnel the most. They were more successful running the ball out of 11 personnel. Out of passing the ball, they were successful out of 22 personnel the most, which is two tight ends and two running backs, and then it was 12 personnel, which was next, which is one running back, two tight ends. So it's like the offense is very successful even with juice on the field, but I think is more successful when he's not on the field. Like it's truly you want the 49ers to evolve as an offense and get more explosive. Their offense is so explosive now,
and
but
we've
when you
kind of
have
been asking that, right? Like, how are ways for the 49ers to kind of shake it up? Because Kyle Shanahan's offense, now that it's like the primary offense that most of the NFL runs, it does feel like defenses are adjusting to it. So it's like they need to, maybe the Juszczyk thing was really beneficial a couple of years ago, but now they are in a situation where they need to start making some adjustments.
absolutely, I think that's where you go, Jawan Jennings, and I think you use Jawan Jennings as that primary receiver three, but I also think Jennings needs to be back because of the injury history of Debo Samuel. If Debo Samuel goes down, receiver two immediately becomes Jawan Jennings, and I think that's where you kind of have to play into factor of who is more important at that point, Jennings or Juice, right? Like if it becomes down to those two, and I think the Niners keep Juice, I truly do. But then just like what I'm thinking
But
of,
just
how can
for
you save
value
money
wise,
and
is what
value
you said.
wise? And I think putting value into your receiver three is more important than a fullback, where an aging NFL fullback, where you could truly run the same stuff just without Juice. Like you could do it with a fullback, a tight
Yeah,
end.
yeah, yeah.
You could do it with your
Jennings could do it.
yeah. So that's why I see it. But it's great comment, great question or point
Yeah.
that he has. Juice is a fan
Really quick,
favorite, so
really quick, maybe I don't, this is so much more of a like a logistical question, but with the restructuring, that's not something, and Al Bundy also says pay cut, Ashley. Is that, maybe that's what I'm advocating for more? If they restructure it, it's actually just pushing the money down the line. It's not that they are like just gonna be able to pay him less. Is that true?
well, you could ask him to take a pay cut,
Yeah.
but would still be a restructure or a new contract situation. So it's either way to say it. What you're trying to say is lower his cap numbers for this year. So it's the
Yeah.
same, pretty much same thing, but it's different way, different wording because he's just gonna
I
have
think that
to.
they can force him into taking a pay cut if he doesn't wanna get cut from the team in
Oh,
general,
easily,
because right? Yeah.
easily,
Now, whether or
because you
not
just
Kyle will wanna do that, because I know that they're, like, buddies, is gonna be a whole different thing. And then really quick, 49ers throwback says, "Hi, Marco." And then, Great Tone, he gave us a, recommendation for a wide receiver, and I'm not against them drafting wide receiver. My only problem with when we're talking about letting go of Jennings or Ayuk or Debo, anything like that, when it comes to this year particularly, I think drafting a wide receiver, totally for it. Relying on that wide receiver this year, I would not do in a Kyle Shanahan offense because he does not let rookies play. So even if they were to draft this guy who seems like he could potentially be a replacement for the way that Great Tone is describing him as a big physical wide receiver who's an excellent blocker, maybe he's suggesting he could be a different version of a Jawan Jennings. I don't know. Maybe he means something else. But if that is, you would still want to keep Jennings for this year because I don't think Kyle is going to trust a rookie to come in and put up as much production as he does them.
I
But
think
that's just
for
my
Rose with me, he would be a receiver
Debo
three
replacement.
option. Like
Receiver
no, not
three.
necessarily
Yeah.
Debo, receiver 3, 4, where you're not using him
Jennings.
as much. He's a yeah, kind of a replacing a Jennings kind of guy.
Yeah.
He is really strong, good hands, red zone presence.
Yeah, he
Um,
agrees. He said it'd be a
not a good route runner.
Jennings replacement if he leaves. The only
Yeah,
problem with that is I don't think Kyle Shanahan is going to put a guy like that on the field as much as he would Jennings. So I think it'd be, if they are doing the all in thing, I think it's smarter to keep a guy like Jennings on the team than rely on a rookie because Kyle Shanahan won't really put the ball in a rookie's hands, as
absolutely.
we've seen. But I really have to pee, so I might close this stream out. Marco, I've had a really good time chatting with you. Did you have any closing topics? I know we didn't get to everything. I could
No,
also
that's
let you chat and run and pee, but I
no,
feel
you're
like
good.
we
You're good.
talked for like an
No, you're good. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe button to both channels, Clutch Gene Sports on my end and
there we
Ashley
go.
Ariana's channel. Make sure you guys hit that like button as well. Do us a favor. Drop your comments in terms of if you think the Niners Super Bowl window has closed, if it's still open. But
My dad is
definitely,
such a my dad is he loves juice, man. If it makes you feel better, I think Marco and I both expect Juice to be on the team. We're just trying to be not we're trying to say he's not worth 6 million.
he's
He's
not.
on the team. He's on the team. He's on the team. He caught is 6 million is not worth 23 touches. 23 touches on the field for less than 50% of the game. If he takes a pay cut, which they have the opportunity, because most people, when you're looking at like, should they move off of them? The reason I'm like, they shouldn't, when it comes to like armstead guys, Debo, stuff like that, aside from their production, if you think they're a good player or not, the 49ers would lose money. They're not saving that much money because of dead cap. Juice is one of those guys that they actually would save money if they caught him.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that with him, they can kind of go up to him and be like, this isn't necessarily an option. I want you to take less money. And but to be, I mean, I think Marco and I both think that Juice and Kyle are friends. Juice check on his last exit interview in his locker room. He talked about wanting to be with the 49ers for for much more time. I don't know if he said something that made it sound like he was going to retire, but like reporters were asking him like, "Oh, like do you want to retire anytime soon?" And he was like, "Nope, definitely don't. Really want to be here." So if he really just loves playing and wants to come back and is willing to either A, restructure, or B, just take a pay cut in general, I think that he will definitely be back. And I like this Christian McCaffrey determines the Super Bowl window. I think all of the players on the team that are stars affect the Super Bowl window. I do agree with Marco that I think Kyle Shanahan is the Super Bowl window for right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But thank you guys so much. Please make sure to subscribe to Marco at Clutch Team Sports and like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Ashley Ariana. I really want to hit 2,000 subscribers. I think I'm only like 40 away or something like that. So try to like and subscribe. Thank you guys so much. Make sure to turn on my notifications. I know I have a show with Stephanie on Monday, but I might be doing something on tomorrow as well. So yeah, thank you guys so much. Have a good one. Let us know if you guys try any treats. That should be the way we start all of our shows from now on. Marco and I are just talking about cookies, so I want comments about the cool cookies you guys are eating every week. Have a good one.